After the most wild WWDC in years, the iPhone 15 keynote had unreasonable expectations placed upon it, and by consequence, underwhelmed many. I am actually perfectly whelmed. Not blown away, but fine. There were a few things that really pissed me off, though. The keynote started out with a tearjerker of a video about how if you're rich enough to afford the latest Apple products, your life will be saved in an emergency. And then Tim talked about everything that they've done this year, from the Vision Pro to 16-inch MacBook Air, a classic stalling measure that suggested this keynote would be on the lighter side. They did have a shout out for MKBHD though, which I thought was amazing. So cool to see, given that like a decade ago, reviewers like he and I, we weren't even invited to events, much less taken seriously. And now they're quoting him in a keynote. Super awesome. Kudos, Marquez. Okay, first up on the upgrade list, the Apple Watch Series 9. From the outside, it looks identical for like the third year in a row. But on the inside, there is a new S9 SoC, or SIP as they call it. It appears to be the first watch chip since 2019 that's not based on the A13 Bionic, which presumably means that it's using a 5nm process, maybe 4nm. It doesn't really matter. It's still dual core, but the transistor count, because of the process shrink, is up 60% in the CPU, and a new neural engine takes over a lot of ML tasks like on-device Siri processing. I actually think this is a huge deal. The watch is where people use Siri the most, given its limited input capabilities, but it's also on the watch that Siri is often the slowest and most frustrating to use, so any improvement at all is welcome. Dictation is also alleged to be 25% more accurate. If this pans out, I think this is going to feel like a much bigger upgrade than the last 3 years of stale watch improvements. Siri will also gain the ability to access health data. Being able to log your weight and when medication was taken is super cool. And then to get notified of health goal progress and health alerts further highlights the watch's fitness and wellness strengths. The other internal changes are a new ultra wideband chip, which we'll talk about when we get to the iPhone, and a new display that goes up to 2000 nits, double that of the Series 8, which will make outside legibility much better. It can also lower itself all the way down to a single nit, which is awesome if you're using it for sleep tracking or if you're in a movie theater. But the biggest advertised feature coming to Watch Series 9 is what Apple calls double tap. Ironically, it will not be available from launch, but is coming sometime next month. Why do you keep doing this? Just have it ready or wait to ship the product. Anyway, you'll soon be able to tap your thumb and index fingers together to perform gestures, just like on the upcoming Vision Pro, but also just like assistive touch, which is a years-old Apple Watch accessibility feature. And not only can you double tap, you can single tap, clench your fist, and flick your wrist to navigate through the entire Watch UI without ever touching the crown or display. I used it on my Watch Series 4 and 5, and it was awesome. Double tap on Series 9, it's going to display a little blue bubble that will indicate to you when you can perform a double tap action, amongst which is pausing music, answering calls, stopping a timer, replying to messages, and more. But what's fishy about this new feature is that it's only available on the newest Apple Watch. And Apple alludes to the fact that it requires the S9 because it needs that new neural processor. But, yeah, what? So while double tap looks cool, unless it's vastly more reliable and accurate than assistive touch, I don't see any reason why there is this generational exclusivity BS, and it actually makes Apple's extensive sustainability segment even more grating than it already was. Apple spent a large portion of the keynote, I'm talking like 15 minutes total probably, about environmental consciousness and the legitimate, noble efforts that they're making to do better, like the commitment to have no plastic in any of their packaging by the end of next year, or using 100% recycled aluminum in their iPads and laptops. They even stated that they're running every Apple office and data center on 100% clean energy today, and not just in the typical corporate greenwashing way of buying carbon credits. They're legitimately running a number of facilities on 100% renewables already. I don't want to sound pessimistic because those efforts are noble and their accomplishments are good, but they also come with a holier-than-thou arrogance that seems hypocritical to anybody that has noticed their years-long fight against right-to-repair advocacy groups. Now, Apple did explicitly mention the iPhone 15 Pro was designed with repairability in mind. This is the first time they've ever done something like this. But it's certainly with asterisks and exceptions and boundaries that they aim to unilaterally define, just as they already have with their existing mediocre self-service repair program. Additionally, I question their reasoning for abandoning leather watch straps and cases that theoretically biodegrade, as opposed to their new 82% recycled sport band and plastic-derived cases, which are still using at least 18% or more virgin material and will never biodegrade. But I admit that I'm lacking knowledge here, so be that as it may. We'll leave it as it is. But yeah, the right to repair stuff, pretty hypocritical. Well, we got an Apple Watch Ultra 2. That's the naming scheme, I guess. And in addition to the S9's features, it inherits an improved altimeter, an insanely bright 3000 nit display. Goodbye, retinas. The sun. Other than that, it's the same. No color variations and no smaller size. I guess they literally don't want to sell me one. I'm not asking for much, just a little smaller. Okay, on to the iPhone. I don't know what I've been waiting longer for. An iPhone with USB-C? Or a powerful web browser that doesn't consume every available system resource like Chrome. Today's sponsor is Sigma OS, an omnipotent tool to navigate the web lightning fast, using every hotkey under the sun. You can use these hotkeys to, say, open a split screen mode for multitasking, or a focus mode if you'd like to monotask. There is a command bar, which allows you to, well, issue commands like new calendar event, or if you're less productive, new tweet. Hotkeys can also open your password manager. They can snooze pages for later. They can perform quick searches that return you right back from whence you came, and a whole lot more. There's a built-in ad blocker and powerful search tool to find every tab you have open, but you're not going to need to do that because workspaces help you neatly organize and isolate your workflows. You can even run multiple sessions on different user accounts simultaneously. If you have lots of Google accounts, this is a godsend. The browser is light on resources and runs blazing fast thanks to Safari's WebKit engine, but Sigma OS gives you the ability to run Chrome extensions as if they were native. I haven't even scraped the surface here. There's AI, powerful Teams integrations, and more. So try Sigma OS today free for up to 3 workspaces. And if you find the need to upgrade, you can do so for $10 a month. Unlimited everything. Click the link in the video description or pinned comment below to download it now. Rest in peace, Lightning. You were loved, but you lived way too long. Real talk, upon release in 2012, in a world of ubiquitous micro USB devices, Lightning was legitimately great. In many ways, it's still better than USB-C. Has a smaller yet higher insertion and removal force connector, has better water and dust resistance, and it has beefier pins that are less likely to corrode over time. Though when they do, they're trickier to fix and a lot more expensive because they're device side rather than cable side. But USB-C, while not perfect, is exactly what the doctor ordered. And it has been years now that I have needed one cable for my iPhone and one cable for literally everything else. It was annoying. Apple is basically 8 years late to the game, but they finally arrived. Better late than never. I hope this means that we will never see a Lightning-based Apple product released ever again. I'm talking keyboards and mice. Get rid of all of them. There's literally 2 fire trucks and an ambulance outside. Hope everything's okay. It must be the Galaxy S23 fire sale. Okay, so those iPhones. The iPhone 15 is really pretty boring because it doesn't inherit much that's really new, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad phone. In fact, I think it's the biggest upgrade that the standard iPhone has gotten in years. We get last year's A16 Bionic SoC, the excellent pro camera system, including the 2x digital crop zoom. There's the dynamic island, a 2 times brighter display, and matte textured rear glass with colors made possible by the most insanely absurd marketing gibberish of all time. The only major hardware change I can see is a new ultra wideband chip. You know, that thing that lets you find AirTags. This has been updated to support 3 times greater find distances and can even be used to find a friend's location once you're within the GPS is no longer useful range. Pretty cool. The chip is also found on the new watches, and they can even locate your iPhone beyond the previously audio ping only feature, which is pretty cool. Not much new comes in the way of software, save for 2 things that do seem pretty neat. First up, you can now request roadside assistance through AAA in a non-emergency situation via the satellite mode. When you're without cell service, which is rad and does happen. Something much more likely to be used than, being stranded in the desert. Second, all photos will now be captured with a depth map when the neural engine detects a subject, human or animal-wise, which allows for retroactive portrait mode application. As someone who never uses portrait mode, I seriously looked. I took 7 portrait mode photos with my iPhone 14 Pro because I always forget and it's slow. This sounds superb. Furthermore, you'll even be able to change what appears in focus after the fact. It's like Litro all over again. And at least in the sample pictures that Apple showed, the depth field window and bokeh effect applied seems a lot more realistic than what I think it used to feel like. Hopefully, that is indeed the case. Moving on to the Pro phones, we talk about titanium
design.
They may have said titanium more times today than they said 5G back in 2020.
5G to 5G.
Just kidding. That's impossible. Yes, heavy stainless steel has been abandoned in favor of titanium. As a bit of an analog watch buff, though I am not wearing one right now, kind of ironic, I was curious to see how they would polish and anodize the metal, two things very tricky to do with titanium. And well, they're smart folks over there. They did neither of these things. The frame is brushed, which is a good move since titanium is softer than stainless steel and will scratch more easily. It's also almost impossible to polish unless you are a Japanese wizard. And rather than anodizing, which is very difficult to do with consistency when it comes to titanium, Apple has chosen to do a PVD coating like they did with their older titanium Apple Watch models. Now let me warn you, deeper scratches through that PVD coating will reveal natural titanium underneath and will be most notable with the black and blue finishes. Wait for Titanium Gate. It's gonna happen. I, to avoid this, will be helping myself to the gorgeous natural titanium color anyways. A titanium frame means a lesser weighty phone, 9% less to be exact. And the phone will feel noticeably lighter. However, as a man who has been happily using an iPhone 12 mini for the last little bit, any Pro phone will seem heavy regardless of metal type due to huge batteries, heavy cameras, and more. This explains why the Pro phones, even though they're using titanium, are still 10% heavier than the non-Pro variants. Another exterior change, to clarify, this isn't important. I know titanium is heavier than aluminum. It's like 2/3 heavier, but you don't need as much titanium to have the same rigidity, so therefore the titanium frames will be less thick. Don't worry about it. Point in case is that there's another exterior change inspired by the Apple Watch Ultra. Gone is the beloved mute switch found on every iPhone since day one. There's a button now. And it, by default, toggles to, well, still mute. But it is a button that is programmable to a number of different actions. Focus modes, camera, flashlight, voice memos, translate, even shortcuts that you can set to launch a specific application, or yes, toggle rotation. The iPad's rotation lock switch makes its glorious return in phone form. Now, weirdly, it seems that you can only program one action to the button, period, including the mute toggle. Only holding the button down actually triggers an action. No single or double tap support, which seems really stupid. Furthermore, the UI for selecting which you would like to use is bizarro and looks pretty, but doesn't match iOS at all. It's as if it were straight out of a Xiaomi device instead. Kind of gives me Vision Pro vibes a little bit. Is this an indication of what's to come for iOS, or just a one-off UX element that will be replaced in a couple years' time when this button is no longer the hot feature? I don't know. Time will tell. The fire trucks are leaving. The inside of the Pro phones house an A17 Pro SoC. This is the first time we've ever gotten a Pro moniker, and I have an idea as to why. No, it's not because it's the industry's first 3nm chip, although that is cool. And no, it's not due to the new onboard crazy GPU. It is the USB 3 controller. Mark my words. The Pro phones got USB 3 support for transferring files, specifically video and photos, to a computer or external drive. Now, USB 3 isn't slow at 10 gigabits per second, or about 1.25 gigabytes per second, but it's hardly fast, and it is certainly a lot slower than the iPhone's onboard NVMe storage can handle. Why we didn't get USB 4 or Thunderbolt is frankly beyond me. Maybe next year. But yes, that controller is on package, which means that the iPhone 15 with last year's chip can only transfer data at USB 2.0 speeds because that's what the SoC supports. This, make no mistake, is abominable. But to make matters worse, I presume that the A17 Pro will strip out this USB 3 I/O controller and perhaps even more components when it makes its way to the base model iPhone 16 next year as a rebranded A17 Bionic or something of that nature. Mark my words, it will happen. All right, back to the SoC. It is the same big little design as last year with 2 performance and 4 efficiency cores. But the P cores are 10% faster and the efficiency cores are, quote, also faster.
Our efficiency cores are also faster and remain unmatched in the industry.
We literally said that, which makes me think that this is a very small single-digit performance increase. Now, most of this process shrink appears to have gone to the new 16-core neural engine that's reportedly twice as fast as the prior chip was, which should mean that onboard ML tasks, of which there are an increasing number, natural language processing, computer vision, AR, computational photography, etc., will all get huge performance and efficiency increases. It will also help the GPU, which too has new gains at a 20% speed increase thanks to an extra core, and also gains hardware accelerated ray tracing. Apple showed off a sizzle reel of games as they always do, but then they just casually dropped the biggest news of, I think, the whole day, that the full native AAA console versions of Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil Village, Death Stranding, and the new Assassin's Creed Mirage will soon be playable exclusively on the iPhone 15 Pro. This is amazing for a few reasons. Number one, that a phone with no fan can run these games at all. Now, we'll see what kind of graphical compromises, metal effects upscaling, and super sampling wizardry they're going to have to use to make this happen, but if it works even at all, that's amazing. 2. The smartphone is the most powerful game console on the planet, but full-priced AAA games, they're an unknown variable. It's never been done before. And if it works, the iPhone could help decrapify the free-to-play garbage space that it helped create perhaps on accident and gain market share as a legitimate competitor to dedicated game consoles. 3, by bringing games to the iPhone, they will by consequence come to the Mac. Games that the Mac has never or will never have sufficient market share to command, making it, finally, a viable alternative to a gaming PC. I can't say much more because our information is very limited, but I am super excited about the potential here. Excited, like I am for the only remaining headline feature of the iPhone 15 Pro, the camera system. There is an upgraded quad-Bayer main sensor with unspecified performance gains that now shoots in 24 megapixels by default rather than 12 megapixels, bringing with it enhanced detail while maintaining that same great low-light performance that we found on the iPhone 14 Pro. Additionally, you can now shoot a full 48 megapixel readout in favorable lighting conditions to HEIF rather than just to ProRAW, which will be great for enhanced detail but in a ready-to-share file size. One other new feature that I'm a little confused about, but cautiously optimistic towards, is being able to choose an equivalent focal length for the default camera lens. 24mm is the default, but you can also choose 28 or 35mm. This is cool, but to my understanding, it's essentially just performing a digital zoom. Now, it has the whole neural engine behind it, so it will probably still look good, but I'm curious to see how they handle distortion and anti-aliasing, pixel binning, etc. I guess we'll find out next week. Additionally, I would like some praise because I predicted this. Thanks, you don't have to clap, just leave a comment down below. I predicted this next item perfectly. Because Apple knows that everybody buying a Vision Pro next year is rich and weird enough to also buy these new phones, the iPhone 15 Pro will shoot 3D spatial video starting not today, but soon, later this year. That will be available on Apple's headset next year. And now we get to the last iPhone camera thing. The iPhone 15 Pro and 15 Pro Max reintroduce fragmentation from within the Pro lineup for the first time in a few years, thanks to the addition of an exclusive 5x 120mm equivalent telephoto on the Pro Max. Now, unlike periscope lenses that have shipped before on other smartphones, this uses a spherical circular lens to fold and refract the light 4 times through a prism to a sensor that is beside but parallel to the lens array. The theoretical benefit is greater light sensitivity than other periscopes in a tighter space. The sensor not only shifts on the X and Y axis for stabilization, but even on the Z axis for autofocus. Pretty cool. There's even a little overlay in the UI so that you don't get lost zoomed in. Handy, but I will say that of the very few samples Apple provided, none of them looked particularly good. They didn't look bad, and with an f2.8 aperture, photos will certainly be less noisy than the f4 plus lenses found on comparable flagship Android phones, but those phones offer a lot more telescopic zoom, like 230 millimeters or more. And if the photo ain't gonna look good anyways, I would rather it look not good but with more zoom. You feel? So here's hoping that with its 120 millimeter, less zoomed up photo, it will create shots that are nice looking enough that, you'll want to use them. Hopefully it's more than what my gut tells me it might be. Look, I don't know if I'm going to be the one to tell you that though, because I'm not sure I'm going to be buying the Pro Max iPhone, because I've been using this iPhone 12 mini for a few weeks and I went back to my 14 Pro yesterday and was like, this thing is huge. So moving from this to not just a Pro, but to a Pro Max, it ain't going to happen. That's me though. What do you want to do? What'd you think of the keynote? Were you disappointed? Were you excited? What have you ordered? Or what will you order? Let me know in the comments down below. But most importantly, and as always, stay snazzy.